Guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety. Today's guest is a 13-year experienced counselor with their areas of specialties are anxiety, depression, grief. Please welcome Corey Woodhouse. Corey, say hello to
Hey,
everybody.
everybody. Hi. Thank you
So,
for having me on your show today.
oh, definitely, I'm excited. Trust me, I was pretty excited about this one too. I was like, man, as soon as you hit me back, I was like, damn, okay, this is good.
Me too.
I
I
got
was
to do
really excited.
this.
I had to figure out the time zone, but otherwise, clear sailing.
It's funny you say that because I've had problems with that because the first person I recorded with, he's BTS time, which is in Britain. So I was like, "Well, we got a huge time difference there."
Yeah, at least we're only 1 hour.
Right? I was like, yeah, man." He's like, "Are we talking BTS time?" I'm like, "What time?"
Like, is that mountain time? What is that? Where are you?
Right. So, but yes, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've had the honor to really help serve my community for 13 years. And so my path to becoming a counselor, it really began with my work in foster care. I was able to see the resilience of children who were facing trauma. So we'd receive children into the program I worked for who had been living on the street, who didn't have a home, or maybe had just been removed from their parents' house. And so it really all kind of started for me with a deck of cards, crayons, playing basketball, going for a walk. And I really learned that if you can just get into somebody's space and share compassion and healing with others, it can really cause that change and cause so much growth in our youth. And at the time, I was thinking of doing teaching, but that really solidified it for me. I was like, I want to keep going. I want to keep doing this. This really feels like the right direction. And so, after going through graduate school, I began working for adults and children with physical and mental disabilities at my local community mental health center. And I got to go into people's homes at a time where they were turned away by services by everybody else. And so I began working with those who didn't have transportation, or they were completely homebound due to mental illness. And I had a lot of chance to just sit with people on the floor and go, yeah, you know what? This is really hard. And to be with them during a lot of those difficult moments and just connect with them on a very real level. So, a very non traditional counseling space, not like the traditional office. Um, and it really reinforced my belief in the power and strength of just authentic human connection and accessible mental health services. So, with each client I met, my desire to offer hope and guidance just kept growing stronger. And so, in 2017, I decided I really wanted to shift my focus to sharing my passion for counseling and psychology with future students and eventual colleagues. So I remember going in and they just handed me a psychology book and they said, okay, good luck with your class. And so all I had was a psychology book in my hand and excitement for sharing information about mental health. And I kind of started my journey to being an adjunct professor. And after entering, I really learned that being a professor is not just about teaching, but also really helping students navigate academic and personal pressures. So um, I really made it my mission to assist professors in navigating this space, and I help design and present materials on how to recognize students in distress. I also help provide training to resident assistants regarding body image, bullying, and how to help other students with accessing mental health care. And then finally, in private practice, I provide tailored counseling, including play therapy for children, support for teen and couples, and assistance in navigating retirement for adults. So I've designed and presented courses for management training for local businesses, including conflict resolution, communication in the workplace, as well as transformative leadership classes. So I provided suicide awareness training to our local high school, and I advocated for our local school system to include the National Suicide Hotline on the back of the student ID cards, and I was successful in doing that. So one of the more recent challenges with my practice is really the COVID-19 pandemic. It introduced me to telehealth, demonstrating that empathy and effective counseling can kind of transcend those physical boundaries. So, I continue to do counseling and care for people across different settings, but I've also had to kind of learn that flexibility between the pandemic and just where the need is in my community.
Yeah, yeah, I get that completely. And the telehealth thing I like because I do therapy myself, and I really enjoy that because I'm in the comfort of my own home and everything like that. So that's the one thing that really resonated with me. Like I've done counseling before as a kid, but it was because my mom had coping issues. She thought trying to project it on me. So when the therapist told her that it wasn't me that was having the problem, it was her, she didn't take that too well.
Mhm.
But and as I deal with a lot of anxiety as it is now, depression. I have abandonment issues because when I was about 13 years old, my mom had dropped me off right at my dad's doorstep and basically just left me. So I like the telehealth visit thing. It's nice. I'm in my comfort space in my house. I go kind of where I got a special chair. I go sit in and do all my sessions there and stuff like that. So it's really great. And that's the whole point of this podcast is just to bring awareness to people that they're not alone out there. Like there's people like you, there's people like me. I'm here to listen. Corey's more here to help you with a lot of that stuff, work you through a lot of that stuff. But I just feel like it's not getting talked about enough.
Absolutely. And what I love is how telehealth removes barriers like you were talking about. You can be in the comfort of your own home. You don't, if you have anxiety regarding going out or being in an office setting, or maybe transportation's a difficulty, or for some other people who are young, maybe their parents struggle with that space as well. This gives them the opportunity to come in and to receive services in the schools, in their homes, in a lot of non traditional settings. And so I just think it's yet another way to reach more people. And same with your podcast, if you think about it. Some people who might struggle with being able to afford traditional therapy, they can come in and they can learn about mental health. And if this is a tool that can help them today, we've definitely achieved our mission, I think.
Right, definitely, definitely. Like I said though, I think the telehealth visiting's great because my anxiety sometimes is really bad, and I just don't. I like to keep my thing private because the thing I did a little research before I even started this whole thing. I asked people what it is what you think when someone says they're in therapy, and like it's a strange response you got. Like you get different responses from different people. And I asked different age ranges, and a lot of times they're like, "Oh, well, they're crazy." I'm like, "You're not crazy. If you got to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. That's the whole point of this thing." Like it's okay to talk to some if you have problems, guys. It's great. It's helpful. You never know how much it'll change your life, and you'll feel a heck of a lot different. Because they can help you figure out those thoughts and everything else in your head.
Absolutely. And there's such different generational views and even sometimes gender views based upon societal pressures or just the society, the time of our society that we grew up within about mental health. And so sometimes for men, there was a pressure. I'm a 90s kid, so I can definitely see in the TV shows and a lot of the jokes that were made against men, how men were basically told to suppress their emotions. And if they didn't, it was often seen as a sign of weakness, or even generationally speaking, a lot of our healthcare, it used to happen in the hospital system. And so you'd really only talk about mental health if you'd been hospitalized and it was pretty severe. And so when we think about outpatient or office counseling, we think of it as something that's so far away, but it's really only about 40 years old. And so you can definitely see how it's starting to become more normalized. We're starting to talk about it more with the younger generation. But with the older generation, there's not that same awareness.
Yeah. You know, I did an episode on my other podcast, Pete's Corner Store, where we talked about mental health, and the statistics were scary. Like, my age group is the second highest amount of men that have suicide rates. And it kind of worried me a bit because I was like, whoa, hold on. Because I had some thoughts of, just things like that. And that's what got me to go do some therapy and start talking to someone about it. And my wife's been real supportive of the whole thing, too, and things like that. But I feel a lot different now about it after realizing the statistics are so scary of my age range alone. And it would fall into that range of what you just said too, basically, because I grew up in the 90s and it was whoa, whole different. If you look at it versus today, it is crazy.
Absolutely. And, I think that it's amazing that you have that support at home too, because a lot of times that instinct just, based on how you grew up, it might be to suppress or to hide. And so, bringing awareness to the fact that with anxiety, sometimes there are these intrusive thoughts about, I'm feeling hopeless right now. What if I just drove my car into the other lane? What if I just drove my car into the ditch? And that doesn't
Yep.
necessarily mean that you're actively suicidal. It means your brain's in overdrive. And just like it's called, those intrusive thoughts are coming in, those unwanted thoughts. and it's increasing that anxiety and that fear. Our brain is really good at being wired to kind of go to that worst case scenario. And so um, it can really scare you to have thoughts like that.
Yeah, and for myself, it's more like my brain would invent theories of things that aren't happening. It's what the one major thing I was having a lot of problems with, and I have a lot of aggression, which I guess turns out to be the fact that when I was abandoned early on, that's why I'm so aggressive about certain things and stuff like that. And I never realized half that stuff was the problem until I talked to somebody that could actually understand everything. And that's the great thing about it too, is that that's guys, therapy doesn't have to be anything other than just someone listening and helping you sort through your thoughts in your mind, because my anxiety some days is horrible, and then I have depression, so they tend to feed each other. So, that's a little vicious cycle going on there. And then I found out recently, though, I have ADHD as well, which explains a lot of certain things, that different characteristics I couldn't explain to people.
Absolutely. And, being able to manage your anger is harder with ADHD because you basically don't have those breaks all the time. Whereas if you don't have ADHD, it's a little bit easier to apply those breaks. But emotional control can be a lot harder. And so I could definitely see where you'd have to kind of step back and learn those tools either with a therapist or I have a great resource I like to share with clients as well. About how to kind of work on that area of slowing down before you react. I recommend the book, The Smart But Scattered Guide to Success. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
No, I haven't heard of that before.
Oh, it's
Um,
it's a really good book. It's written by a teacher, and it's written by a psychologist together. And in their book, they give out different ideas to strengthen different executive skills for ADHD, and emotional regulation is one of those executive skills. It's a really good read. I really recommend it.
I'll definitely check it out for sure. Definitely. I'm still learning more about this whole thing, because when I was a kid, they diagnosed me with ADD, which I didn't think that was what the case it was, honestly. But not like I talked to my therapist recently, and she had stopped me and she said, "Hey, has anyone ever told you that you hit either one of those points?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I can tell because you tend to hyper focus on things and stuff like that." And I had mentioned that to somebody else that I had found recently, that that's what I've been dealing with as well. And he goes, "Yeah, I could tell that, because I had lived with somebody before and had a roommate. I had a room in the house. Like, I'm talking, when I tell you I had crap galore, I had collectibles like you wouldn't believe in there. Like those little pop figures, I had like 300 plus of those and everything else. And I had weird like tendencies, and I did emotionally be attached to a lot of them too."
Mhm. And so, with that hyper focus too, I know sometimes it can be frustrating or overwhelming too if you're in the middle of doing something or you're hyper focused on obtaining something and someone's trying to get your attention or they're trying to remove the attention from that. And so, you don't necessarily think about that as attached to emotional regulation, but it absolutely can be because it can be distressing sometimes.
Yeah, and it was bad. I had a real bad emotional attachment to a lot of stuff. Like, I'd freak out at certain things when I was moving them, like from my new place to where I'm now. I'd have a panic attack, like if somebody moved something the wrong way or somebody moved the box the way they dropped it too much. And it wasn't even like they did anything. It was just, "Hey, whoa, whoa, settle down. Don't be dropping it like that." And then they weren't even doing it. They were just putting the box down like a normal person would. And I just freak out completely.
That definitely reminds me of my time working in foster care. When we'd get our kiddos and we'd help them unpack their things, and usually it was just in a trash bag. And you think of unpacking, you don't want to just go in and dump everything on the floor. That would also cause them to go into a panic attack because that's what they have and that's their world. And they're not ready for everything to come out yet or to be put away or to be changed yet. It's something that they have to be ready for and prepared for. And so, it's a lot of just sitting on the floor with them and going, do you want to unpack this? Are you ready for this to come out now? And that bag to them, that symbolizes this is the last thing that I knew, the last time I felt safe. And so I don't know if safety might have been part of the piece for you too. It's just, I don't feel safe moving this or change this right now, or I'm not ready to move this yet.
When you say that, I did feel that way. My wife Stacy, when we were dating, she had come over to my place and actually moved everything around in my room. And she's like, "Oh, look, I did something for you." And I started panicking. I'm like, "Oh God, what did you do?" And she sent me a picture of it. And, like, now that you say that, I freaked out completely because I was like, "Oh my god, I hope she didn't do nothing." She was very careful with everything too. She mentioned that to me, and I was panicking the whole time because I work at night, so I was at work and she had texted me and sent me the picture, and I was freaking out completely in my mind. I'm like, "Oh god, did she move this? Did she break that? Did she remember to take care of these things?" And it was horrible.
Yeah, and moving, physically and also metaphorically is just, I think, such a good example of anxiety at work because yes, we have our physical space and the anxiety from that change in environment and kind of the unknown. But I also look at therapy a lot like unpacking and moving boxes too. So it's kind of like that move you did where you meant to put all the stuff in the kitchen box in the kitchen box, but when you go to open the kitchen box after you move, sometimes you find stuff from the bathroom or from your room or those unexpected things. So therapy is kind of like, how can I sit with you? And as you're ready, slowly start to unpack some of these things that you haven't unpacked yet. And with that will come the expected. But with that will also come a lot of like the unexpected things that you didn't expect to feel, that you didn't expect to go through too. But it's all kind of tied by this thread.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that completely too. Um, so far, that's how it goes. So like, it's just kind of like you conversating with my like me and a therapist now. We kind of conversate about my week, how everything goes. Little by little, she kind of pulls on certain things to bring them out. Like,
Hmm.
hey, we got to discuss this, we got to discuss that. So I get that completely though.
Yeah, and the idea is not to force or to push, it's as you're ready to come to it and as you're ready to do that. So much like I would just kind of sit with the kids on the floor, sometimes we'd unpack their bag and sometimes we're just sitting on the floor, getting comfortable on the floor, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and I see how they feel about that too because there's certain things that I didn't want anyone touching when we moved, and I had that same kind of feeling like I don't want to really unpack that right now. And I think she recognized that a little bit too as we were moving stuff. She was like, "Hey, what about this? Do you want to open it?" No, no, I don't want to do that yet. So I put it in a closet, put it away somewhere, and then eventually I started unpacking some of the stuff and going through it and seeing that I just don't have the need for the space for this stuff. So I let go of it very slowly, and she was really great about it too. I had a lot of stuff, but she was, like I said, she was really cool about the whole thing. She understood exactly what it was because she deals with a lot of she has a lot of mental health problems herself. Like she
Mhm.
has severe PTSD. Like what did she say? It was C PTSD?
Oh, chronic, yes.
Yes. Yeah, she's dealt with a lot though. So she was very understanding when it came to this whole scenario things, and when I told her I was going to seek therapy because I needed to fix the problems I'm having, and she was very supportive of it. She was just like, "Hey, da da da," just basically she's like, "Just don't." Like, she told me the same thing. Everyone tells the same thing. Everybody's like, "You may not find somebody right off the first bat that works with you, and it's just not. It may not be that they're just not the one for you. That's it. So don't give up on it." And my brother, he also is a psychiatric nurse. So he's been my biggest support too, as well. So like, I talked to him about a lot of stuff, and he's the one that's been pushing me. Hey, you should talk to somebody about some of these problems.
Mhm. And we jokingly talk about this in the therapist world, much like a dating thing. It's let's normalize having to maybe check out a few therapists till you find the right fit, and like let's make it okay and that the normal to kind of take your time on it because it is a really important relationship in your life, and making sure that you feel comfortable and relaxed and that you're able to get what you need from the process is just incredibly important. And something I'm thankful for is a lot of insurance companies, even though they mostly cover weekly counseling, for that initial finding a counselor, they'll usually allow several sessions during that first week. So you could see like three counselors that week and they'd help pay for it. And so just getting the word out there too that, like, yes, your insurance company will reimburse that. Yes, it's okay to have a few appointments that first week while you're trying to find someone. And, we kind of are used to that on our side too, on the therapy side, going, yeah, sometimes it's a good fit and sometimes it's okay. If, it's not the right fit, just making sure you get the care that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too, guys, is like don't give up, man. It's rough. Sometimes you'll just take you a few people to figure out somebody that fits what you feel is okay. Like I've been through a couple people already, and I think I'm on my third one now, honestly, and I me and her get along great. She understands me. We just click, and like you'll just know it's that kind of feeling you'll have, and you'll feel safe to talk to them about stuff, and you can tell them anything you like and things like that. And with my therapy sessions, before I start, they send you a checkup every week, basically. So, which is something new to me because I've never seen that before when they did it. Um, they'll ask you a bunch of questions. How you're feeling. Are you anxious? How many days are you anxious? Hey, are you having doubts, depression feelings? Are you having thoughts of suicide? Things like that. They'll ask you all that stuff, and then based on the rating, we discuss it a little bit, and then she'll ask me about certain things, aspects of what it is. So, hey, if your depression's a little higher, but your anxiety's lower. So, hey, is there something you're not happy about? Is there something that's got you down? Things like that. And it's great, guys. Like you won't even understand. It doesn't even feel like half those therapy sessions you're watching TV. So don't watch TV and expect that's what therapy is going to be like. It's really not like that. It's more of a conversation between two people with the other person basically has a better understanding of how your brain works and can help you with some tools and things like that, such as Corey can help you with certain things like that too.
Absolutely. And, those measurement scales that you talked about, it's important not just for us, but for you too. I always encourage my clients to take note of those measurement scales or to track their symptoms as well. So if they have to go into a psychiatry appointment or their doctor's asking how they're doing, I know in our mind we always think, oh, we kind of know how our symptoms have been going, but it's so easy to just blank because you're put on the spot and you're in that moment. It's like, well, let's see, I've had kids starting school or I've had work this week. I've had all these other things kind of interfering in my mind. And so it's kind of like a gentle reminder of like, okay, let's stop for a second and kind of check in and see how I'm doing and be able to report that to them.
Yeah, that's really what it's like, guys. Honestly, I'll tell you, it's just what it's like. Like, you just unpack your week to them. They'll ask you how things going. Like, I talked to my therapist about the show I'm doing now, and she was like really excited for me. She's like, awesome, and things like that. And, I told the whole point of this was just like, I'm exploring my mental health. Why not, other people join me too, share their stories, let them know they're not alone, because that's the main thing you always hear is that people feel like they're alone and they have nobody to talk to. It costs nothing to be kind to people these days, guys. I meet people all day where I work. I talk to people all day. I've heard the craziest stories ever happen. I think the top three things I've ever heard was one guy's wife died. The other guy said about maybe 20 minutes prior to him walking into where I was at, he said his son died, and he gave me the whole scenario, the whole story, and he was just like, it was just nice to tell somebody about it. And it's just crazy. Like, don't feel crazy to go talk to somebody and tell somebody what's going on, man. Like, that's a great thing. I have a good support system. So I have a number of people I can call at any time, and I work, like I said, I work overnight. So like if I'm pulling your phone up at 2 in the morning, it's a real deal. I'm calling you for that scenario. I need something. So and all of them say the same thing. Hey man, you have a problem, you start freaking out, call me. We'll walk through it. I also have I don't know if you ever used these before, Corey, with some of your patients, but I have a like an anxiety journal. Have you ever heard of those?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I love that you have one.
I love it. It's great, guys. The way it works is basically it'll take what you're thinking and basically move your brain away from it, and it walks you through steps of what to do and everything like that. And it's great. One of my good friends actually sent it to me. She was like, "Hey, here, you should try this." And she said to have one of those, one of the journals, like if you have intrusive thoughts, you can put it in there. At least put it out there. That way, it's out there so you can discuss it if you want to or not, or it's just that way the thoughts out of your brain. But like I said, the anxiety one works really great though. Like when if I'm feeling really my anxiety kicking up really hard, I'll just take it out. I'll just start following the steps, and by the time it's done, I feel a lot better about where I'm at personally.
Yeah, it helps you zoom out and really balance your emotions, which I like a lot. So, our negative brain, I'm going to call it, is it just kind of takes a magnifying glass and it goes to the most self critical thoughts or negative thoughts or worst case scenario. And it's like we're only seeing a small part of the entire picture. And so, exercises like what you're talking about, they help you really step back and look at the connection between what your thoughts are and if you're really taking in all the different information. And you can create safety by creating distance from those thoughts, exploring some of those patterns that are there, or even just thinking about, hey, am I being fair in my self criticism to myself? Would I speak this way to a friend? Um, are there moments I can think of where maybe I was a good friend, for example, to other people, and using some of that real world evidence to help balance out some of that negative thinking? That negative thinking really wants us to block out the positive and to block out a lot of our abilities. But this allows you to kind of create more of that balanced view and step back and to see more of the picture. I think there's other ways to help with this as well. Writing's one of them. Another one is changing your physical space. You know, sometimes kind of getting up, going into a different room, or going for a walk and taking nature in through your senses, allowing yourself to get away from some of those overwhelming thoughts can be really healing as well. And another good way to do this is to call a friend, get a different perspective. You have a spouse, go talk to your spouse about your feelings and what's going on. You can also just listen to music. I laugh because my husband listens to metal music to relax. And so you mentioned ADHD. For him, that's what helps calm his mind and helps him feel more centered. So, kind of going towards those things when your mind's focusing on the negative and making everything feel so big and overwhelming because you're so close to it, and finding healthy ways to create some of that safe space so that you can start to process through it. And the last thing I'll say is kind of the order of, what that would look like might be creating that safety and kind of grounding yourself and getting away from some of those scary thoughts, and then kind of coming back down and writing them out in the journal after you have some time to really just kind of focus on your breathing, on taking some time to do something relaxing, starting to feel safe again.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I get that completely because that's usually what I'll do too. I'll usually do music. I'll go for a walk because I have two dogs, so I usually get up and take them for a walk every morning. So it's great. I have diabetes as well, so it's kind of nice for me. A lot of my times, my doctor will say, if you check it, it's high. Just go take a walk. She's like, just take a walk around the block, come back, check it. I guarantee the number will go down. And then even at that too, guys, I listen to a lot of podcasts outside of doing my own. I'm constantly doing something, so I'm always having something, and a lot of times I'm just, depending on what it is I'm doing. If I'm by myself, I'll call somebody, like Corey said, call a friend. I'll talk to him. I got a good friend in California. I've told him the craziest shit possible. Like I've told him things that you guys wouldn't even believe, and he just sits there and doesn't say a word. He'll either say something or he won't say anything. He'll just kind of go based on how the conversation goes. So
Oh, and those are some of the best friends that can just kind of care about you in that space and allow you the space to have those feelings. Because, like I said before, and I do see this a lot with men again, is that need to just suppress your feelings or to push them down. But when you're in that space where you're pushing down your feelings or you're avoiding those feelings, it can really lead to increased feelings of passive aggression or even aggression because you're not really getting the space you need, you're not feeling seen or heard, or you're just feeling alone. And that's a really terrible way to feel. But when a friend steps back and they just create that space for you and they create that room for you, almost like that bubble for what you need, it feels so good, regardless of if they have the right thing to say or any advice. It's just this compassionate, healing space for you.
yeah, definitely. Or you can trauma dump him is what my
Yeah.
wife likes to call it all the
I
time.
love
She's
the
like,
buzz terms. Yes, trauma
yeah,
dumping.
she likes to say that all the time. So you just trauma dumped on somebody? I'm like, yeah, yeah, I did.
It
I
used
just
to be
called them and did it.
emotionally vomiting.
It's basically what it is. Yeah, really what it is, honestly, too. And like you said, that sense of like feeling I'm not being heard. I was in that space for a while. I felt like that with my ex. I just wasn't being heard. If she gaslighted me a lot of ways too, because I was like, I knew she was up to no good. Basically, in the result, she cheated. I knew she was, but the way she went about it was she kept telling me that, making me think I'm the crazy one. I'm like, I don't know, man. I think there's something wrong here. But Lou, my buddy in California, is the one that started pointing out things to me. He's like, hey, man, look at these facts. Look at this. So, we were good friends at the time, but we became even closer friends after that because he's been through this whole thing with me, this whole situation from the beginning to the end, all this stuff I've dealt with all these times, and she was a big manipulator. So like she'd sit there and convince you things, and then just like I said, she would convince me that I'm the crazy one because I'm pointing out the things that don't make sense. And then she's just kind of making me feel like I'm the one losing my sanity. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I think something's wrong here.
Absolutely. And I see that a lot with people who are in kind of that bully or controlling role is that they tend to shift from bully to kind of victim to back to bully. And so there's really not a lot of space to call them on their behavior because there's a lot of denial, unwillingness to change, and just really kind of avoiding that dialogue altogether. And if you push it, then they kind of go into that victim mode of, oh, you're being mean to me, you're saying this about me. And so, there's about zero space for you in that, because you can't really even be upset about the behavior or talk about the behavior, change the behavior. And so just hearing that you had a friend and someone who helped to validate you and create that space for you again, and to say, okay, let's look at the picture, let's look at your track history, let's look at what I know as your friend about you, and really bringing in that like strong evidence of who you are. I just think that's awesome that you had that, and I'm really glad you did. It's very easy to get isolated in those situations and cut off from your family or from your friends, especially if someone has more of an intimidating personality. They might make you really feel as though you're not worthwhile or you deserve what's happening to you. But that's not true. That's just how they maintain that control.
Yeah. So just like Corey just said, they cut you off from your family. So the scenario setup is that me and her were together. I lived with her, but I didn't talk to half my family members because she didn't like them and they didn't like her. So the way she did it is she controlled me by basically keeping everybody at a limited space that they couldn't reach me. There's a lot of people that tried to help me get out of the scenario that knew something was wrong, and they just basically just like, hey man, I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry, but you're on your own. And like my brother is the one that really pointed everything out, because he was like, I was talking about how like I had these voices in the back of my head. They were talking to me and telling me to do these things and things like that. He was like, yeah, this is not a good place. You need to get out of here right away. And eventually, like we ended up separating eventually, but it took a toll on a lot of friendships I have. I don't talk to like half the people I used to talk to because of her, because she tarnished all my friendships by just basically controlling me and turning me against everybody. It's like even if they were trying to help me, she'd make it seem like they're not. Oh no, they're not trying to help you. They're trying to pick on us. Woe is me. I'm the victim. No, no, no. I'm the victim. And then she would be aggressive towards them to keep them at arm's range away.
Yeah, and it's something that I think they operate with a power of silence, like because you're essentially silent, so to speak, or they're able to kind of operate in the background. They maintain that control over you. But like if anybody's listening today, I want you to know that you're not alone in this. It affects everybody, counselors included. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much education you have. It affects absolutely everybody. They've been in these types of situations. And so don't feel ashamed. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to not know what to do. Find a friend, find someone to talk to, find a counselor to talk to, if you have the ability to seek counseling as well. But just knowing that there's a lot of resources out there to help you. I recommend a lot of times for people who can't afford traditional counseling to either try to go through their local community mental health center. They have a lot of resources for mental health there. I also recommend the Open Path Collective, which is therapists who help volunteer their time at a significantly less rate or a free rate sometimes, pro bono services for people who can't afford traditional therapy. But just the importance of finding someone and connecting to someone and knowing you don't have to do it alone. In the more extreme cases, there's also the domestic violence hotline. And so that can be another great resource, just to say, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling afraid. Please help me find someone to connect to.
Oh, yeah, those are all great resources too. Really are. Um, I'm sorry. I'm reading over my notes from what you. By the way, everybody that doesn't know, I sent all my guys the questionnaire. Corey had put in the questionnaire. I was going to ask her about this when you said you have in here saying. I was wondering if you could tell people when they should seek help for their depression or anxiety for a professional.
Absolutely, yes. And so something that I think is really important is to look for some of the signs. For me, you really want to kind of gauge, is my anxiety or my depression starting to impact different areas of my life? So, for example, maybe the normal coping tools that you have to manage anxiety, like going for a walk or therapy you had in the past, stop working. You might start to have more difficulty at work. or you might start to notice that you're having more difficulty in relationships with others, or you might start to see a breakdown in self care, or all three. And then with anxiety, you want to look out for more of that excessive worrying, maybe nighttime anxiety, difficulty concentrating. It can be feeling more agitated, which I think about it almost as like a server. You have this serving tray, and we go about our day and we keep adding things and adding things and adding things to it. And sometimes it's that one small cup or that one piece of silverware that just tips the whole tray over. And you might not even be as agitated about that one thing. It's just everything that you're carrying. And so using irritability or agitation as a gauge of, am I overwhelmed? Am I carrying too much right now? I also see a lot of stomach pain or nausea. When our body is releasing a lot of cortisol with anxiety, it stops our stomach from digesting food. And so we feel more nauseous or might have more stomach pain. And in Eastern culture, they don't always have traditional therapy there. And so the doctors are trained that if they come in and they talk about stomach pain, even if they don't feel comfortable talking about their mental health, they'll ask them questions about anxiety and prescribe them medicine for their nausea to help out. And another symptom could be feelings of apprehension or dread. So we talked a little bit earlier about this, some of those intrusive thoughts that come in, some of those unwanted thoughts, like, what would happen if XYZ happened, or imagining something terrible happening to somebody that you love, or worry about something terrible happening. This inability to control worry, or even just avoidance of feared situations. So someone says, hey, do you want to come to this party with me? Your anxiety might make you hold back and go, not today. I'm not going to be coming out. I'm going to be staying home. And so starting to avoid some of those very specific situations. And then, the last one that I really talk about is really just withdrawal from social group. I make sure if I have a friend and I haven't heard from them for a little bit, or I feel like they're pulling about it back, I just kind of reach out really quick and ask if they're okay and check in with them. And, if they're fine, great, but always just kind of doing that little check in. So if you find yourself kind of avoiding, withdrawing, pulling back, having trouble controlling your worries, if it's starting to impact you in different areas of your life, that's really kind of a sign that it's time to help get some support. And so there's a lot of great tools out there and evidence-based techniques that have been researched for many years and have proven to be equally as effective as medication. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy can help manage some of that negative thinking and really help you feel safe and grounded again. And so, again, don't be afraid to talk to your doctor, to call the helpline. I also talk to people about 988, which is the suicide hotline. You can call that number, you can text that number, or you can go on their webpage and you can type in your question on their chat on the webpage. But these services are free of charge and they're there to support you. The volunteers are very passionate about what they do, so they're also happy to help.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. That like the suicide hotline is a big thing. My wife told me, she's like, when I start doing this journey I'm going on now, she said, make sure that's something you add into a lot of your like promotional videos you do for all this stuff, or if you do something with towards your podcast, then make sure you add that in there so people know there's places to get help, and things like that. You can reach out to them, and these guys, they'll talk to you about whatever if you're feeling those thoughts and stuff like that, and that's the craziest part of it all. I've lost a couple friends to suicide, so it's just a crazy because you don't know what people are thinking, like, and to Corey's point where she says that, ask them if they're okay. Sometimes people just say they're okay just to tell you they're okay, but are they really okay? That's a real question too.
And, suicide, it doesn't always look like somebody who's withdrawn or sad. Sometimes somebody has a sudden burst of happiness or a sudden burst of energy, and, they seem like things are getting better or they're doing okay. And so you're absolutely right. We don't know what somebody's going through. And so raising awareness about this hotline, talking about it, helping normalize mental health for men, especially as they have a higher rate of suicide, and helping let as many people as possible know that you are not alone in these thoughts, and they can be scary, but it's okay to reach out for help. A lot of these volunteers who help staff these hotlines also have friends or family members who they've lost to suicide. And so it's a very personal mission. It took us about 12 years to really push for this number. And it wasn't just counselors who wanted this number, it was the community as well, and people who had been through loss like that. And so it used to be 1-800-SUICIDE, but all those letters and numbers and trying to dial that when you're upset was too much. So we said we need it to be shorter. We need people to be able to text it because calling might be too overwhelming right now. And then they put the web page together for people who felt more comfortable typing. So find what you feel most comfortable with. Let people know that there's options on the hotline, and use that hotline.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Because a lot of times I like to use the chat functions and things instead of calling people. And it drives my wife crazy because I do that all the time. I'm like, I just don't like talking to people. Like I deal with people all day constantly, and I can't stand people sometimes. It's just because I deal with people with different walks of life and different aspects, and they say things to you, and you're just kind of like, eh. You get the macho male that comes in and like, oh, there should be a woman in the kitchen type scenario. To then you get the next person that comes in that's very shut off, having a rough day, and you just saying, hey, how you doing? Can make their day right there. Hey, have a great one. Can make their day right there. And it just takes very little that people don't realize.
Yeah, and you mentioned, it doesn't take much to be kind earlier, and I completely agree. Being able to just see somebody in that space can be so important. And, you know, in terms of accessibility, if you are able to call, that's great. And if you're not, that's okay too. I think even counselors, we go through our day and we counsel, and sometimes we're tired. So do we talk at the drive-through window? Nope, we go on the app and we order our food because we're done peopling today, and that's okay.
Listen, when you deal with people all day, trust me, it's a great escape. Actually, there's someone in our comments here. Facts Porcupine Podcast has a question for you. He says that can you ask the guest about the lack of not taking the medication, and how does her family member that was really watching a person figure that out in doctor visits?
So, if I'm understanding your question correctly, are you asking about how to handle medication noncompliance? Does that sound right?
Yes, yes. Porcupine says yes.
Okay. And so the other question I have for them is it because they are not wanting to take the medication, or is it just difficult to remember the medication?
Okay, hold on. I got the answer back. They also said, and should we go to a doctor visit with the loved one, with our loved one?
Okay.
I think you should, honestly. In my opinion, this is just an average Joe's opinion. I think you should. The support alone, they probably appreciate, like you being there,
Absolutely.
trying to better understand what they're dealing with, and what are some of the side effects they may deal with, so you know what's going on.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of speak to both in the meantime, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Both are kind of different. So, okay. For starting with, if you're forgetting to take the medication, that's very normal that if we don't have something integrated into our daily routine, we have the best of intentions, but it can just go overlooked because a lot of interference or other things can come into our day. And so, as much as possible, you want to use the psychology of making it annoying so you can't miss it. So, kind of like that seatbelt alarm that goes off in your car, you want to put that bottle somewhere where you have to physically move it to turn off your alarm, or physically move it out of the way to open your computer, or put it somewhere where it's right there. There's also, if you talk to your pharmacist, they sell weighted pill boxes. And these weighted pill boxes, if you forget to take your medication, it'll actually text you and keep annoying you and text you until you take your medication. You can add other phone numbers in there too. So if they're older, for example, and they forget to take their medication, it can text your loved ones and they can help you to get your medication. So that's kind of, a couple tips to help with that. But let's say it's not about forgetting the medication, it's about not complying because they're not feeling comfortable with taking the medication. I'd say your advice of going with them to the doctor's appointment's really important. And I also think having them write down a list of what their concerns are with that medication, really becoming organized before going into that doctor's appointment with what specific worries or questions you have. And then also exploring alternatives with the doctor. Because, for example, some medications can cause weight gain or an increase in anxiety, or can exacerbate symptoms, especially if you're talking about bipolar. And so there can be kind of a curve to finding the right medication. And so having a list of, okay, I've tracked my symptoms for 7 days. What does this look like for me over the 7 days on the medication, to talk to the doctor about, or having a list of questions. Or in the most severe cases, if let's say they have severe mental illness and they're really struggling with being able to take their medication, sometimes there's alternatives such as injections for medications where the doctor can do a weekly injection versus them having to remember their medication every day. And sometimes having that appointment and a time on their schedule that's part of their routine is easier for them.
Porcupine also asked if you think they should use a tracking device for people that leave the home unexpectedly.
A tracking device for people who leave the
I
oh,
think
I
it can like life
understand.
alert. I think like maybe life alerts what they're referring to.
Hmm. Yes, and so there's a couple things. And especially depending on their age and their ability levels, I recommend alarms for the home, especially if they're experiencing dementia or severe memory impairments where it could be dangerous, where you can hear and an alarm go off when they open the door, or it could notify your phone if they open the door. That way, they're not at risk of getting hit by a car or getting hurt. But if it's something along the lines of like ADHD or depression, it's something where you really want to have that personalized conversation with that person saying, hey, is this something that you feel comfortable with? Do I have your consent to put this on here just to ensure that you're safe? If they feel safe with that being part of their care, I say absolutely. But if they don't consent to it, I'm all about consent with tracking. So it's got to be something that's agreed upon, with the exception being memory impairments, dementia, or where it could become more of like a dangerous situation if they were to get out.
Definitely, definitely, I agree with that too. I do think if you discuss it as a person that probably, you know, would have had to have that if my everything got worse. You don't want to feel like you're just being tracked for no reason. Like there has to be a purpose. Like hey, someone comes to me like Corey said, just talk to him about it. Say hey, what do you think? Think it's okay? Were you gonna be all right with this? The whole idea is just so we can make sure you're safe if you need something or anything like that. So
Absolutely. It's important to keep people safe and let them know you care about them, but we also have to respect their decisions and their rights too. And so, being trustworthy and talking to them about it, I think that's going to improve your relationship with that friend or with that family member versus breaking down that trust. I think that's going to further isolate them.
definitely, I agree. I agree. It's a hand in hand thing, guys. It's okay to talk to your loved ones about things like that. And ask them, "Are you okay? Is there something wrong?" If you notice something wrong, it's okay to ask people if something's wrong. Is there something you want to talk to me about? This and that, because you never know. You never know what people are thinking at any moment of the day or what's going through their heads and cycling through all that kind of stuff like that. And
Yeah, and
I
I
run
hear a
through that
lot of
issue sometimes
oh,
too. No, you're
yeah,
good. Go ahead.
and I was just going to say, I hear a lot of family members tell me they regret not having said something. They were worried they were going to hurt someone's feelings, but something felt off, something didn't feel right, and they didn't say anything. So it's okay to, lovingly talk to someone if something you feel like something's wrong. Maybe they are being a little more forgetful, or maybe they unexpectedly got lost, or maybe you're seeing a shift in the way that they're talking to you. It could be their tone, it could be what they're talking about, and so really being able to sit down and in that space say, I care about you, and I don't mention this in a judgmental way. I'm just noticing that something's different, and I wanted to talk to you about it.
Yeah, definitely. If you notice different things about them, how they're doing things differently, anything kind of out of the ordinary, it's always good to notice things like that. So if you kind of notice them doing something out of the difference, it's just ask them, hey, is something wrong? Is there the reason you're doing this versus that? Kind of thing like that. Because a lot of times that can be a dead giveaway that something's not right.
Yeah, and when you're in that headspace, sometimes you're thinking you're alone, or that nobody cares, or that you're a burden to other people. But when someone creates that space and just says, "Are you okay?" or something's different, allowing them to feel seen, that can be healing too. Just having somebody notice.
Yeah, definitely. I was at that point right after me and my ex broke up. I was all alone. I was drinking. I was by myself, and I had a friend that was just like that, just like Corey said. She asked me if everything okay, and I told her no, it's not. I'm alone by myself, and in a real quiet space, real small room, because I lost everything. I lost everything when we split up. I was living in one of those like weekly rental apartment type deals, and I was walking to work every day. And one of my friends, she had noticed that something was weird, and she's like, "Are you okay? Like, you don't seem like everything's all right." She's like, "You're alone by yourself an awful lot. You've been going through a lot." And I said, "No, honestly, I'm not. If you want the honest answer." And sometimes, be prepared for what people say next because you may not like what they're saying, but that's what they're thinking, guys. Like, it's okay
Yeah.
to not like what someone tells you. But if that's what they're thinking, I mean, that's what they're thinking. You can't tell them no, you're wrong. You can't think that. Oh, you can't do that. Like, don't tell them you can't. Just listen to what they're gonna say. Just let them vent it out because maybe they just need to say it out loud for you to hear what they're thinking, and then go from there with that because it's very powerful too. And you have someone that'll just listen to what you say versus trying to tell you no, you're wrong.
Right on, Pete. One of my least favorite sayings are the good vibes only shirts or posters out there. Like, with the people I care about, all vibes are welcome. You're having a good day, that's awesome. You're having a bad day, I'm still here for you. Like, whatever vibe you are, that's where we're at, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay to have crappy days and some days to feel down. It's just how it is. Like when you're dealing with this stuff, it's like I have days where I just don't, I don't like anything. I'm just kind of like, I mope around. I'm not in a good mood. You know what I mean? I just not really talkative. My wife's the same way too. She has those days where she just kind of wants to be left alone. So I'll leave her alone to do her own thing. I'll check in her every so often. Hey, babe, you need something while I'm up? And she's like, no. So it's nothing wrong with letting people have space too in that sense as well. If you notice that they're just kind of like in a kind of down mood, maybe they're just feeling down for the day. It may be nothing you did or anything else.
Yes, and if you experience anxiety, this one can be really hard to do because sometimes you might personalize that. Like, they're feeling upset, I can't make them feel better. What did I do wrong? But just remembering that it's okay to give someone that space, and it's okay to let them hold those feelings and what they're going through and kind of bring them to you when they're ready to do that. That doesn't mean that you failed or you did anything wrong. That just means that you're creating space for them to come to you when they're ready to do that.
Yes. I'm trying to read Porcupine here. He says in the comments, he says, "Can you have?" He wants to know if you can talk about the. I'm guessing he means the pressures that are placed on loved ones and family members, and anything that they could do so they don't get affected by constant concern. Are you talking about like suicide wise, like if they ended up deciding to go through with it, kind of thing? Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to read this.
For
Kind of
sure.
feeling like that. I mean, I'm trying to understand your question because to me, I think that's what he's trying. What they're trying to say is that, like say someone were to fall through. Let's see. He responded back. No, the pressures that families that are caring for these folks. Can she say if there's anything that we could do to make sure that we stay stable?
Oh, you mean taking care of yourself when you do have a family member with mental illness? Absolutely. So I think that it's really important when you know that you have a family member to see yourself as more of the lighthouse versus the tugboat. The tugboat is the person who takes on other people's concerns, and it becomes so heavy that there's this capacity, and you start to almost sink or go down with the boat, so to speak, because you're trying to kind of pull that person along or kind of take responsibility for everything that's happening. But you want to become more of the coach or the lighthouse. What the lighthouse does is it casts that guiding light, and you help guide your friend or your family member or significant other through what they're going through, but you don't hold the weight of that yourself. You instead you create a space and you help provide resources and compassion and caring to them, and you allow them to do that work. And that might mean even making boundaries sometimes if you need a break. It's much like having a newborn baby. Sometimes you need to step away a little bit, and that's okay too, to really take care of yourself. But when you stop becoming the tugboat and you move to the lighthouse, you're essentially saying, I believe you can do this. And I've seen you do this before. I'm willing to help kind of guide you along to those resources, but I'm also allowing you the space and the time to make this matter. And when that family member is able to really own that and take responsibility for that and to make those changes for themselves, it means more to them, and it also stops you from having to be like this rescuer. and coming in and almost like saving them or feeling like you might be enabling them. And it allows you to have really a healthier relationship with them because you're letting them hold what they're going through, but you're still there for them with those boundaries there.
That's great points there. Any other questions you have, Porcupine, before we start wrapping this thing up today? Oh, great, by the way, Corey, I do really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it's
It's
a
like I
pleasure.
said, I was
Thank you.
excited. I'll definitely want to know if you want to come back for another time.
Yeah, this is fun. Let's do it again. Yeah.
Definitely, right? Actually, I got some news to share with everybody. I actually been approached by an online radio station to this exact show on there on Mondays at 11. So I'll definitely get out with you about doing another time having you come on for that whole thing too.
Awesome. Let's go.
Right? Let's see. Sorry, I'm reading the note. I'm still kind of used to getting used to this program I've been using here. So definitely, man, I appreciate it, Porcupine. And all right, Corey,
Thank you,
we're gonna go ahead and
Porcupine.
start. We're gonna start wrapping this up a little bit. Do you want to let everybody know where they can find you if they want to reach out to you for some help?
Absolutely. You can go to my website. It's www.coreywoodhouse.com. That's CoreyWoodhouse.com.
Awesome. Um, guys, as always, you can find me on TikTok at Pete versus Anxiety podcast. I'm also on Instagram at Pete underscore versus anxiety as well. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this week's episode, everybody. Corey, I really do appreciate you coming by. Like I said, I will definitely be in touch with you about the whole radio station thing. I should know something here with the next week or so. So we'll definitely get it together and have you come on again and we can go and see where things go from there.
All right. I look forward to it.
Definitely. I appreciate it, guys. Well, everybody, this has been another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety. We are going to be premiering the show in September. If you're listening to it now, I will be dropping episodes every week. I'll let you know more as it gets closer. And once again, Corey, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And like I said, I will definitely be in touch with you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Have a great one.